Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Guppy. Guppy is a special character that is unlocked only after you beat Mega Satan 666 times. That's not true, don't quote me on that, I'm just kidding. This is actually just a special daily run where we're playing as Guppy, so we got 3 starting Guppy items, and essentially these special daily runs happen every now and then. In Afterbirth, I think there were like 15 or 16 of them in total in a year, but now I think Edmund said that there will be 3 a month, which means that about every 10 runs you're gonna see a special run, and these special runs could be really anything. They can be we starting out as Guppy, and one of the daily runs I remember we were playing as the Lost, but we didn't have the Holy Mantle, which was just a pain in the ass, but I'm just trying to say that there's a lot of variance in how the special daily runs can go. You can either be very strong or very weak. And I think that is a good testament to how Isaac really is, and I really like the fact that they are balanced in that way, that we have some of the strong ones and some of the weak ones. I wouldn't like all of them to be just a challenge, because I think sometimes you just need a nice run to go along, and maybe just to give you some of that Isaac invigorating experience. And obviously this is what we're getting today. We got Synthol as our first item, and the second item I found was Magic Mush, which is just ridiculous, especially with Agape transformation, because essentially every damage up we get doubles the damage of our flies, and we also deal more damage. Every damage up we get is essentially triples up our damage. I think that's the correct math, but so if we get 1 damage up, that means our flies deal 2 additional damage, and that we deal 1 additional damage. So in that sense, I'm trying to say that we deal 3 times the amount of damage that you would deal if you didn't have the Guppy transformation. And obviously the flies are just a powerful asset, and especially when you can generate them. One thing we have against us in this case is just that our tier delay is quite low, and the fact that we have a low tier delay is not that big of a problem, because we have Guppy's Head, which means we can essentially generate enough flies to kill enemies regularly and still save enough of them to kill bosses just in one shot as soon as we enter it. But the real problem is that we have to beat Hush on this floor, I mean on this run, and not we don't have to beat him, but obviously if you want a high score, the fact we start out with Guppy, we can expect people will go for those objectives just because you start out so strong. We have to go to Hush, and the fact we have this low tier rate, it's just not doing it for us, because what Hush is gonna do, he's gonna hide, he's gonna take all of our flies, and then he's gonna spawn 30 enemies, and then our damage is not gonna be high enough to actually deal with those enemies, and all of the flies that will spawn will just, suicide and kill the blue guys or the blue polyps that will spawn, that Hush will spawn, and that'll be a problem for us, because we won't be able to dish enough and out damage, even if we have Guppy, to deal with them. And that's why I say in some situations I prefer having a high tier rate, because at least then you can get away by just not having high damage. Just having high damage usually means you still have to shoot enemies at least 2 times. I would rather kill an enemy and shoot them 3 times in 1 second, or kill them in 2 times in 1 second. And what I said kind of contradicts myself, because we are doing more DPS in that situation. But what I'm trying to say is that I would rather have to shoot the enemy more times, and it would take slightly longer than shooting enemy just twice and taking a longest time. And I don't really like the notion of having high damage and low tier rate, but in this situation this is what we want, at least on regular rooms, because like I said before, each fly does contribute to our damage up very statistically, and that is why I decided to actually take Fear Shot in this case, because what Fear Shot does is, besides giving you fear on your tiers or a chance to get there, it also increases your damage. So what I wanted to do earlier on is actually skip the first devil deal, because it was only Book of Belial, and then I hoped that I would get the angel rooms later on. And essentially what happens when you go to angel rooms and bomb the statues, every time you beat an angel you get bonus points, and I think you get like 300 or 400 bonus points, and that's akin to actually beating a boss trap room. So if you can find like 3 angel statues in the span of a run, you can actually get an additional 1000 points in total, I would say, which is a very big amount of points actually, because Boss Rush gives you 5000, so essentially you're getting 1/5 of that by just going to angel rooms, and you're still getting items obviously from angel rooms, so it's not like it's that bad of a deal, and especially on this daily run where we're already as strong as it is, so we don't really need any good items to get us going. We can afford to make that decision, and actually, like I said, did want to make the decision, but what happened, I saw that our tier rate was low, we didn't get any tiers up, there were some damage up, obviously Magic Mush and Synthol, but I felt like it wouldn't be enough for Hush, and I just wanted to actually stack up on damage as soon as possible. And when I was on the 3rd or the 4th floor already, and I saw the Devil Deal and the Fear Shot inside, I knew that I had to take it just for my survivability. Even though I would like to get like 600 more points at that point, it was unlikely that we're gonna get a lot of entry rooms. So maybe we would be behind by 300 points, but I don't think missing a potential 300 points is worth just not taking that damage up in that situation because of how well it synergizes with our actual combination of items that we have. And I hope I'm making sense in this situation now. I said situation a bit many times, so excuse me for that. But what happened in this boss rush was a very interesting proposition. We entered it and we saw the D100, and the D100 is usually an item that I don't really like taking because I think it takes all of the skill away from the game. Essentially what it boils down to is just you use the D100 a bunch of times, and eventually we're gonna get a really strong run, and because we have Guppy, obviously, that is just gonna explode and we're just gonna kill enemies in one shot. But in this case, I felt it was kind of necessary for us to use it, but also I just wanted to show off maybe a good usage of that particular item. In this case, because we had Guppy, even if we had a bad reroll, which is usually the biggest fear of getting something like Soy Milk and Ludovico Technique, because we have Guppy, that means that even if you get a bad reroll and a really, really weak run, we can still rely on the flies to actually deal some additional damage with us. And the fact we also gain the transformation like the conjoined transformation, and we don't lose any points for that, we only basically gain DPS and gain some AoE damage. I think for all of those reasons and the fact we have Guppy, it was a much easier decision to make, and especially on boss rush, because every 3 waves we just have to survive for 3 waves and we can use the D100 again. And due to the span of boss rush, we spawn like a bunch of bosses, which means that we can use the D100 about 6 times, I would say, maybe even 8 times. That's a bit much. Well, basically we can use it a lot of times, and one of them is not guaranteed, but very likely that it's going to be good, and that is what we rerolled on. We got attack hacks with conjoined, triple shot. Our damage isn't super high, you can see it's only 6.1, but with attack hacks, thankfully, we don't need a high damage stat to actually deal damage, just because of how the tiers work, and because basically every time a technology shot goes to the enemy, it deals damage like 3 or 4 times, and the fact we have Guppy tiers, and also because the technology shoots so many times, we also produce a lot of flies, and then those flies deal a lot of damage. This is actually the ideal combination for the setup we have currently, which just allows us to melt enemies. And obviously this is great for Hush as well, because we can kill multiple enemies at once. As soon as it starts spawning his little blue guys, will just be getting so many flies, we'll be killing them immediately, and we can just burst them down. And I want to show you the power we wield. Our final transformation is in our hands, and I'll show you just how good it is when I actually start fighting Hush. It's not that good against the first phase, just because we do rely on actually dealing 3 shots to kill enemies in a lot of situations, and the fact that our rings are quite big and the fact our tier delay is quite low means we can charge them pretty fast. But you can see just how fast we're melting Hush in this situation, and the fact I didn't manage to get hit even once. This was one of those no damage Hush runs. That is a true testament to how strong the run is. And even though maybe a familiar saved me here and there, and maybe infamy blocked a shot or two, the fact that I didn't get hit is obviously an indication of just how powerful you can get with the D100 if you use it properly. And by properly, I mean just press it a few times until eventually you're gonna get a good run, and that is gonna win you the game. But overall, you know, this daily was actually a super fun one, even though I don't really like the D100 usually and I skip it, but not for the case of that I don't really like fun runs, but because I think it makes things a bit too random. I would really like if the D100 in dailies was capped to something like 3 uses, because that what would happen, you would still have to wager, is this a good time to reroll, because maybe you're not that weak, maybe you're like an average, but you know that every time you reroll you can end up screwing yourself up. And I think depending on the position, if you only had like 3 rerolls on any reroll item, that would severely limit you, but also in some situations it could help you out. So I think that would add a very interesting effect to how the players would approach the game. Obviously, I'm not saying just leave everything the same in the single player mode, because there's no reason for the D100 not to be there, because if you don't like it, just don't use it. Or maybe if you want to cap yourself to using it 3 times, then just use it 3 times. But in this situation, in daily runs, I think it's important that there should be some, I guess, static alterations to the game just to make it a bit more fair. And I'm not saying make it a bit more fair in the sense that I feel like it's not fair. I think it's still fair, because we all of us have the same chance of using the D100 in that situation, and we all are playing the same run with the same possibilities. Obviously, I'm saying if you're not cheating, if someone is cheating, then there's no helping that. But because this is all of the same run, we can all have the same chances, and I think in this case, it's still important for us to actually just consider how we can make it better, because I think the dailies are obviously not broken, but they do have some technicalities that I think should be kind of fixed. And the fact that, for example, the new void floor doesn't give you any additional points for exploring it, I think that's a huge oversight in the fact that we need some indication, I would say, to actually promote players to go out of the comfort zone and actually try new mythologies and new strategies that they usually wouldn't if they actually want to rank high. And I think that ranking high should be more as a consequence of obviously your skill, but also about experimentation. So reward players for doing challenging things, that's what I'm trying to say. And there's nothing challenging about using the D100 a few times until you eventually get a really, really strong run. So for that reason, I think it would be much more strategic if the usage of those reroll items would be limited. So that was my little rant on the topic, but we did finish 34th, which is obviously a very good score on Gridbot, which is, if you don't know, a leaderboard where all of the cheaters, or most of the cheaters, are removed. I think I was like 17th, which is in the top 20. I wish for nothing more than just to be a top 20 on a daily. Obviously there will always be people which will find a way to break the game and just get a lot of consumables, but in fact I hope that I show you that you don't need to break the game to actually rank better. You just need to maybe know the game a bit more than the average person, and I hope that I'm showing you how to actually exploit the mechanics of the game and use them to the greatest advantage you can. And if you took anything away from this video, remember that you should always reroll with the D100 and the D4, because eventually you're gonna get a really, really good run. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.